Hello, and thank you for joining me here today on this webinar where we're going to be reviewing the latest release of FileCatalyst Direct 3.7.3. And if you have any questions during my presentation, just ask them in the GoToWebinar questions pane, and I will get to them at the end. The webinar is really we're gonna just concentrate on what's new in 3.7.3. I'm gonna show you some of the new features, and I'm gonna be also discussing quite a bit about some of the features, not necessarily showing a demo because it would be just probably easier just to talk about it at this point. So let me see here. Oh, I see a question. Okay, so so let's get started. So 3.7.3 came out last week. The build was done on November 7, and I think we launched it just last week. So it's a very fresh release, build 5. That's what's on our download site right now. Some of the key improvements. You can see here I pulled up the release notes. You have this packaged with every single product of ours as well. If you go to our support portal, you can find the release notes there as well. Some of the things that we've changed. So MD5 checksum. So for those that transfer very, very big files, let's see, 40, 50, 100 gig files, MD5 checksum was always a little cumbersome. It was slower. It was slow, and we've added some native calls to speed this up. The speed factor is quite substantial, as now this all uses native calls in Java to do it. We did have some other MD5 options. I can bring those up here that some of you may have used in the past because of the slower MD5. So you can have full, concurrent, and partial MD5 checksum. So this new MD5 will apply to all three, and will give you better performance when you do MD5. So you don't have to wait there for 20 minutes to do an MD5. It's faster now. Let's move on here. So Windows installers. So all our products now, if you take your server, hot folder, transfer agent, and central, come with the new type of Windows installer that is Windows native. So that means if you don't have Java installed on your system, everything still will install and deploy. The Java is prepackaged. So for the server, hot folder, and central, it's probably not a big deal. Because if you're installing this on the system, you can just download the latest runtime. But if your transfer agent, however, because it is a web-based plugin that runs, in a system tray and talks to the web browser, that's a big deal because now transfer agent installer, even if the end user doesn't have any Java whatsoever, will be able to install transfer agent. And everything will run. Everything is prepackaged, so it's completely transparent to the user that there is even Java involved at this point, which makes the transfer agent deployment a lot easier, especially for non-technical users, where before they would get prompted saying, "Oh, this requires Java," and then they would have to install Java runtime to get transfer agent. Now all of that is gone. We made some auto detection changes. Again, this is probably the best part of that is, again, transfer agent. When you're doing a lot of wild web-based transfers where you don't know where you are and you don't know what connectivity you have. So the failover between protocols. So HTTP UDP is if you set the protocol to auto, UDP will be your base where you start. And if UDP fails because of firewalls, then we'll try multi-stream TCP. If multi-stream TCP fails, then we'll do a single stream TCP. And if a single stream TCP fails, then we'll do HTTP uploads. And again, HTTP uploads are not there for acceleration, but they are there to get you by because of firewall constraints and other network issues. So the next one here we did is allow ability to specify file ownership and group on file uploads and downloads. So this is one here. I have a little demo I prepared for that. So normally when you have FileCatalyst server running, it always runs as administrator. So when you start it or stop it, this process here, maybe I can even show it to you here. Yeah, so this Java process here will run as so here's your Java W, and it runs as a specific it will run as administrator. So all the files that land are handled by FileCatalyst server would always end up being owned as by administrator. And here's my example of this. So for example, here I have a directory of, so you can see here's the home directory for John, and you can see all the files are landing here as John, the owner of the file, because that's how I configured the server. I'll show you in a minute how I did that. But if I go into a directory that is not set up like this, you can see here that everything lands administrator. So in previous versions of FileCatalyst Direct, all the files that were processed by the server would land as administrator, and there was no way to specify it. This new version, now we can have a choice where what the owner is going to be of the files. So the way you would do this is that you would go into your users here and select the user you want to modify. So for example, here I'm going to select this user, and you have force file ownership. So you can force the ownership to be matching of whatever the username is that is logging into FileCatalyst server, or you can overwrite this and specify whatever user you want for this account. So this is very useful, especially if you're using LDAP or Active Directory. You can have everything configured that Active Directory manages all your accounts, and then all the files that you transfer will land as the proper owner in the right directory. So it's just deeper integration into the operating system. This, by the way, works both on Linux and Windows. So this gives you much better control, especially when you're doing backups or sending files where you need to retain ownership of files. This is very important. We've already had in the past ability to set the attributes. So if you have specific attributes, read, write, execute, all of those will be also ported on Linux. And now we added the ownership side. On the hot folder, you can also, when you download tasks, you can also force. So this is unfortunately an upload task, but you can on the download side, you can force the ownership. So when the hot folder is downloading files from the server, you can say download as the make files ownership of that specific user. Again, it's deeper integration, very handy for backups, very handy for complex user management. This feature is built in again to the download site is built into all the clients, and the server has the built-in option here for the user management. So once again, the same concept applies on Linux. But if I do a directory of a user that doesn't have this setting, you can see everything comes as administrator. And if I do a directory of a user that has this set, then everything comes as this user account. So that's one of the features here. Let's continue here with other things. So we've been working a lot with object stores, and we already have integration with Amazon S3. We have integration with the OpenStack, Swift. We added support for 2 more object stores, including Google Cloud Storage and Backblaze. So now you could use you can mount your home directory to, for example, Google Storage, and use our hot folder to upload files to it with automation and security and acceleration. The other thing we added was the encryption at rest for Amazon S3. So there's an option in the object store at S3 that you can enable encryption at rest of your files, and if you pass in the key to FileCatalyst server, you can then encrypt encrypt the data that are uploaded to from your local machine to Amazon S3 and be encrypted at rest. Ability to restrict bandwidth. So this is a new feature that we've added because some users, this is useful if you have a mismatch between the bandwidth. So some of our users might end up having a gigabit license, for example, on the direct server, but for some reason their bandwidth was reduced to maybe 100 or 200 megabits. So without this switch, the server would always try to use the maximum bandwidth capacity. So if you had a, let's say, 1 gig license, then the server would assume you have a 1 gig network and then divide up the bandwidth accordingly to that 1 gig network. If, however, your bandwidth gets limited, this would create a whole bunch of problems. If you all of a sudden your bandwidth to the server dropped to 100 megabit and you had a 1 gig server, so now you can modify, you can control that by saying what's your overall bandwidth, and the server is going to use this value instead of what's provided in the license key. So you can drop it or reduce it. You have much better control of how server is going to manage this extra, this smaller bandwidth than the license key. So HTML admins. So this is something that we've been working on since I think 3.7. This is when we started our HTML port. So right now, all our administrative tools use this Java Swing, Java native GUI for managing users and all the properties of the server. Yes, you have a remote administration, but it is a Java Swing. So it's been now for 2 years we've been working on getting rid of the Swing utility and move everything to the web. And we're getting pretty close. I would say probably this is going to be our last release of the Swing GUIs. Moving forward with version 3.8, we'll be completely shifting to HTML. So when you're starting with HTML, you'll have this type of look. I mean, the interface is very similar to what you had in the Swing GUI, but now it's all runs in the web browser, and it's much easier to maintain and control, and for us to also develop features on it will be much faster than using the Swing GUI. So this is, I think, will be our last release of the Swing GUIs in 3.7.3, and in 3.8 you will see the HTML admins being the default. We'll keep the backwards compatibility on the Swing GUIs for, usually we do it for 2 years. So, you're in good shape if you want to continue using them, but just start getting familiar with these HTML. So if you want to get to your HTML admin, you go under administration. You have to make sure that enable HTTP remote administration is turned on, and then you have your link here. So if you click on this link, on access link, manage application, if you're going on localhost like I'm doing here, it's instantaneous. You don't have to log in. If you, however, are running on, you can set a password requirement as well here. But if you're going remotely, so now you're going to have a remote IP, then you'll be prompted for password, your admin password and username and password. So that's the remote admin front. Again, you can control, what's the IP address and all that stuff is here on the HTTP setting and administration. But we'll be for sure we'll be moving away from these from the Swing GUI shortly. So one of the things we've done on the API side is that we always had a server API and a client API. And in order, for example, if you needed an API call to create a temporary user on the server and then use this temporary user to upload files, you would need both APIs added. There were some quirks with that process because you needed to have 2 jar files imported into your project. There was a bit of conflicts. There were some workarounds. So we finally combined the server API with the client API. So now all the user management and uploads are happening with single jar file, and some of those compatibility issues we've had in the past are gone. We have a very good webinar actually talking about this process. If you go to our website, FileCatalyst.com, and you go to our resources webinars, there's a really good webinar that my colleague Elton created, integrating FileCatalyst with APIs, that actually talks about this exact functionalities to create a temp user, upload a bunch of files, delete the temp user. This is useful for security reasons. You don't want to expose necessarily your passwords, and it's a very secure way of working with this. Or for example, if you want to use transfer agents to upload files, that's also very useful for that. So I definitely will. I'll have this webinar recorded here as well. But this is a very good resource for training if you're looking for specific use cases. I usually keep all the most useful webinars on the webinars page here, and you can find them through here or our YouTube channel to get to it. So this is the CLI. This feature is minute here. Is just ability to use the CLI to modify expiry date. So on download, so this is client. So I already talked about this feature. It's the same feature as file ownership on the server, but it is on a client. New scheduler. So we've put a lot of we've had hot folder. Let's just go into hot folder here. So hot folder scheduler is quite a busy tool, if you say. Like here I only have one task and they're manual, so no problem. But we've reached we had customers defined 300-400 concurrent tasks, and some of these tasks were running every 5 seconds or maybe every 10 seconds. And we had a lot of at that point we were hitting a lot of stability issues with the transfer scheduler. So this version 3.7.3, we put in a lot of efforts to make scheduler and task schedule much more robust. So at this point, we've run tests. I think our local tests run with up to 300 tasks, and everything is much more robust. The tasks are not getting stuck at saying just processing. And so this was something that we've done. We kind of we made it work with very large amount of tasks and busy tasks that are doing a lot of transfers. So again, this is something. This is an improvement. It's not really a visual thing, but you will see a huge, especially if you have very lots of busy hot folders. This will be a big improvement for transfers. So this is for the feature side. I really only had one demo here to show you the file systems and uploads. I'm not gonna really go into the bug fixes, but there's there's a big number of issues we've addressed in 3.7.2 and 3.7.3. So the key things here you got to retain is really that we improved the ownership, file ownership, and we've added this ownership feature for both clients and the server, and the ability that now the installers don't require any prior Java installation whatsoever. It just works out of the box. And that's the key improvement here is really for the transfer agent. When you're using Link or using transfer agent for upload, this is much easier now to install for the user and to run it. That's about it for me. Let me see if I have any questions here. If I have any questions, so please ask them now, because this is a good time right now to ask them. I have a question here about uploading logos on the link. So since version 3.7.2, we added the ability to set a link on the logos on the link. I just want to show you this here. The link feature is the feature that allows you to send files to an email recipient. So here's our link, and you can create basically email someone a link to a file or a directory on your FileCatalyst Direct server, and using with conjunction of transfer agent, the user can download the link without downloading a large email attachment in your email. So here's the service image that we added. I think this was not added in 3.7.3. This was added in 3.7.2, I believe, or 3.7.1. So you can specify your custom link. So if I go into, let me just go into the welcome here, and I go to email link, you can see here there is the custom logo now gets loaded. You can create a logo, and it will appear for upload and download, and you'll be able to transfer files. So the link is the link improvements. You can put your email address here for who you want to send the files. I'm just going to show you to those that are maybe not familiar with our link feature. So this is an optional field. You can specify the date when this package expires. You can have it assigned by system, or you can have it user can pick something, and now I just have to add files. So I can browse my local files here, and I can add some files to upload, and I can also go to my remote files. So these are files I'm picking from the server right now, and I can share those files as well on my FileCatalyst server. So this link will also appear in the emails. So that's another thing. So if I click send here, and now the files are sent to the recipient. So now I'm going to flip my hat, and I'm going to become a recipient of this email. So I'll just open my email here, and here's my logo that I mentioned that is now available, and here's my link, and I have to just click on this link here to get to the files that were shared with me. So this is I mean, I have lots of webinars about this, but just wanted to show you that the logo appears here in the email. This has been done in a while back. So other than that, I don't have any other questions at this point. So thank you very much for attending today. It's a very quick webinar, just a quick review. And now we're going to be getting ready for our 3.8 release. It will be in the spring next year. And well, just looking, there will be some new and exciting features. It's going to be much more feature rich than this 3.7.3 release, but I just wanted to make sure that everybody was up to date on what we're doing here. So thank you all for coming, and talk to you next month.